The gate was a cathedral of steel and arrogance, a fortress of glassy alloys stretching across the cold void. Ships queued like cattle at a slaughter line, herded by tractor beams, their pilots squawking across channels filled with static and impatience. The alien generals lounged on the upper deck, their uniforms cut from shimmering scales, their medals clinking like coins in a miser's purse. They had made an art of cruelty. Mockery was the seasoning they sprinkled on power. Today, their eyes found the smallest, strangest morsel in the line. A human, a woman, alone. She stood in the docking bay with the posture of a schoolteacher waiting for a bus, one hand resting lightly on the strap of a battered duffel bag. No armor, no weapons visible, no retinue of soldiers or drones. 30 years old by the records later cross-checked, but to the generals she looked barely older than a cadet. Her clothes were practical. Dark jacket, plain trousers, boots scuffed by long travel. She hummed softly, as if she were in a grocery aisle back on Earth. The contrast to the fortress's grandeur made her look absurdly fragile. "By the stars," drawled General Rex, his mandibles clicking as his underlings tittered. "They send us children now." A mammal child, fresh from a barn. Another, General Scarron, a brute with ridges curling like horns, smirked. "Perhaps she is bait. Perhaps her species dangles weaklings to distract us." The laughter rolled across the balcony, bouncing off metallic walls like hailstones. The woman lifted her chin, smiled faintly, and adjusted her duffel bag without speaking. There was no defiance in her movements, no bristle of offense, only the careful calm of someone raised in polite company. At the checkpoint arch, the scanner hummed awake. Blue light swept over her frame, recording bone density, blood chemistry, neural patterns. Then the light froze. The screen flared crimson. Alarms hiccuped. A warning, blunt and unadorned, scrawled across every display in 50 alien dialects. Human detected. Designation Alibaba Yaga. Warning, do not engage. For a heartbeat the bay fell silent, the laughter dying like a drunk cut off mid-song. Then came the nervous chuckles, desperate and forced. "A glitch," Scarron snorted. "The machine is old." "Translation error," offered Rex. "Baba Yaga. Sounds like one of their farm animals. Yes? Some chicken." An under-officer whispered, "It says do not engage. That is protocol language, not translation." "Then someone has toyed with our systems." Rex waved dismissively. "A hacker's prank. Humans cannot be this." Meanwhile the woman offered a sympathetic smile. "I'm sorry," she said softly, voice warm as a candle flame. "I didn't mean to hold up the line. Is it always this slow? Or am I just lucky?" Her English words were filtered into the aliens' tongues by the translator chip implanted in her throat, but something in the cadence made them blink. She sounded courteous, almost apologetic, and yet the apology sat oddly, like a razor wrapped in velvet. A junior officer leaned toward Scarron, whispering urgently, "The designation, it matches old reports. From border colonies. Units lost without trace, command ships boarded. Survivors speak of." "Shut your mandibles," Scarron snapped. He turned his grin toward the human. "Tell us, little mammal, do your people always dress like miners? I expected feathers, or at least bright paint. Instead you look like a janitor." The woman laughed lightly, a chuckle polite enough to pass at a dinner table. "Well, sir, back home we try not to wear our funerals in advance. I suppose you prefer uniforms that double as parade floats." The general stiffened, their pride pricked, but she delivered the line with such innocent sincerity that they could not quite pin it as insult. It hovered in the air, half joke, half barb. "You see," muttered Rex, "they try mimicry. Like parrots. Repeat sounds with no meaning." "Like cockroaches," Scarron corrected, his voice dripping condescension. "Resilient, perhaps, but destined for the heel." The woman tilted her head, eyes glimmering with mild amusement. "Cockroaches survive everything. Fires, floods, cities falling. You might not want to pick that comparison." One or two aides suppressed nervous chitters, unsure if they were supposed to laugh or fear. Her voice never lifted above conversational warmth, yet every syllable coiled with suggestion. The scanners still blazed crimson. Techs battered at consoles, muttering about corrupted subroutines, but the warning refused to vanish. Alibaba YGA do not engage, it repeated, steady as a drumbeat. The words carried a weight that gnawed at confidence. Vrex clicked his mandibles again, trying to reclaim dominance. So tell us, human, why come to our gate? Surely not as an emissary. Your species has no seat at our table. I was invited, she said simply. Or perhaps the invitation was forged. Hard to tell. You know how mail is. She smiled again, and the absurdity of the line prickled their scales. It was human humor, a dance of understatement that hit its teeth. They hated not knowing if they were being mocked or dismissed. Scarron loomed closer, his shadow stretching over her. And if we cut you open, will your species complain? Or would they simply send another farmer's daughter? The woman's eyes softened. She spoke with the same patience one uses with misbehaving children. The last ones who tried didn't live long enough to file paperwork. But if you'd like to test the pattern, I can wait. A hush spread. The words were spoken with such calm sincerity that for a moment the aliens wondered if she knew something they did not. She did not tense, did not posture, merely shifted her bag slightly, as if rearranging groceries. The ordinary movement became terrifying in its banality. One officer cleared his throat. General, shall we detain her? The warning persists. Detain. Vrex scoffed. She weighs less than my youngest offspring. Look at her boots. Worn through. She is nobody. Exactly, Scarron agreed, but his voice carried a hairline crack. A nobody given a frightening name by a malfunctioning machine. Names are powerful, murmured one aide. Silence, snapped Scarron. He gestured for the guards. Escort her in. Let her see how empires greet insects. The woman inclined her head politely, as though accepting a dinner invitation. Thank you kindly, she said, and followed without hesitation. The generals watched her vanish into the fortress, their laughter slow to return, the scanner's crimson glow still pulsing like a heartbeat behind them. Whispers crept among the younger soldiers. They repeated the name under their breath. Baba Yaga. Old tales from intercepted human transmissions. Half-understood folklore about a witch in the woods. Humans told stories to scare their children. But what if the stories were maps? Warnings disguised as bedtime. Scarron forced another laugh, loud and brittle. A legend, he declared. We rule with science, not fairy tales. His words echoed, but even he did not believe them fully. The gate's walls seemed to lean inward, listening. The woman's footsteps faded into the corridors, unhurried. Behind her, the display still screamed its single command across every console, unaltered, undeniable. Do not engage. The phrase lodged itself like a splinter in every alien mind, a quiet order from some greater intelligence. And though they mocked, though they spat contempt, none of them dared touch the scanner's controls to override it. The duffel bag shifted against her hip as she walked deeper into the fortress. Something inside gave a faint metallic clink, too soft for the guards to notice, but enough to make her smile deepen almost imperceptibly. The name followed her down the hall, whispered in fear and jest alike. Baba Yaga. And for the first time in years, the fortress of steel and arrogance felt less like a citadel and more like a coffin waiting for its occupant. The corridors of the alien fortress were polished obsidian, every surface reflecting distorted silhouettes of those who walked them. The woman's boots tapped softly against the floor, each step unhurried, as though she were strolling through a museum instead of the stronghold of species who laughed at her existence. Guards flanked her on both sides, armored giants with plasma rifles slung across their chests, but she thanked them politely, as if they were bellboys carrying her luggage. They stiffened at her words, unsure whether to snarl or bow. No one had ever thanked them before. The generals reconvened in the high hall, a chamber of banners and shifting holograms, their arrogance swelling to cover the unease gnawing at them. Rumors already crawled through the ranks, whispers of the scanner's warning spreading faster than orders could smother it. Soldiers muttered about folklore, about human myths that refused to die even in the vacuum of space. A name meant nothing, the generals told themselves. Yet the woman's every gesture made it harder to believe their own lies. She entered without ceremony, duffel bag still resting against her hip. She looked around as though she were admiring a hotel lobby. You do polish things well," she said, her voice soft but carrying clearly. "I could almost see myself in the walls. Though the lighting is a bit harsh. Fluorescent? Or some alien cousin?" The hall fell silent. Compliments were not part of the rituals here. Flattery was expected from the weak, but this wasn't flattery. It was observation. A casual remark delivered, as if she were at a dinner party. Generals shifted on their thrones, discomfort prickling at them like sand in armor. "You speak too freely," Vrek said, mandibles clicking irritably. "This is a fortress, not a tavern." "Ah." She tilted her head. "Forgive me. I suppose I should save the jokes for the tavern. Then, if you have taverns, do you?" The question was disarming in its innocence. A few younger officers exchanged bewildered glances. To them, taverns were primitive, relics of planet-side cultures. The idea that she could be genuinely curious unsettled them more than a threat would have. Scarron leaned forward, his ridged face twisting into a sneer. "Humans always pretend to be curious. You probe, you ask, you laugh. But it is mimicry, a bird repeating sounds. Nothing more." Her smile was small, almost indulgent. "Birds don't invent telescopes. Or bombs. Or baseball. Do you know baseball?" The translator rendered the unfamiliar word as gibberish. An aide asked cautiously, "What is this baseball?" Her eyes twinkled with mischief. "It's a game where you stand politely until someone hurls something at you very fast. Then you hit it back harder. Simple enough, isn't it?" Some soldiers laughed nervously. Scarron bristled. "You mock our council with farm games." "Not at all," she replied gently. "I'm simply explaining how we practice reflexes back home. We like to train without realizing we're training." She shrugged. "Keeps us from getting bored." The words lodged like hooks. Training without training. Preparing for war while laughing. The generals exchanged sidelong looks, unwilling to admit the metaphor unsettled them. The human's calm had teeth. Vrex snapped his claws, and a guard produced a device, a weighted sphere designed for strength trials. He thrust it at her feet. "Lift," he ordered. "Show us if you are more than a bird." She looked down, then back up at him with an expression so mild it bordered on pity. "Oh, dear. My bag's already heavy enough." She crouched, gripped the sphere delicately, and lifted it with one hand. Her arm trembled slightly, as if she struggled, but she set the sphere down with care. The floor dented. The dent was subtle, a shallow curve in steel that no one could mistake. Gasps rippled through the hall. "Oh, dear," she said again, brushing her palms as though dusting off flour. "You might want to have someone check the flooring. Looks like it's softer than the weights." The silence that followed was thicker than armor plating. The generals stared at the dent, then at her calm expression. Had she truly strained? Or had she feigned weakness while casually denting a surface that resisted plasma fire? Their imaginations did the rest. "You tampered with it," Vrex hissed. She raised her eyebrows, her tone almost hurt. "Tampered? With a ball I just met? Now that would be impolite." A ripple of suppressed laughter broke among the lower officers, quickly silenced by their superiors. Scarron's ridges flushed darker. "You play games with us." She smiled warmly. "Of course. Isn't this called a game of diplomacy? Or is it just intimidation with extra chairs?" Her phrasing stung. Every polite word twisted like a dagger, disguised as a feather. Even her posture, relaxed, slightly tilted, signaled comfort in a place designed to crush outsiders. The more she smiled, the more their authority felt like paper shields. The generals decided to probe deeper. They questioned her about Earth, about humanity's fractured alliances, about their reliance on technology. She answered with anecdotes instead of data, her words a mosaic of humor and menace. "You have no claws," Scarron observed. "We invented scissors," she replied. "Your bones are fragile. Fragile things get creative. Your species clings to stories like children. Stories outlast empires." Her tone never sharpened. She could have been discussing recipes. Yet every exchange left them colder, as though they were drifting into a fog where they could not see the edges of her meaning. An aide finally asked the question that gnawed at them all. "Why does the scanner warn against you? Why does it say do not engage?" She folded her hands neatly, eyes glinting with kindness that did not reach her smile. "Oh, that. I imagine someone thought it would be safer if you didn't. I can't say I blame them." Her vagueness was more terrifying than a threat. Safety for whom? Her? Them? The galaxy? The question hung, unanswered. The hall grew restless. Soldiers shifted. Aides whispered. The name Baba Yaga passed from mouth to mouth, half mockery, half prayer. Generals barked at them to silence, but the word clung like smoke. Baba Yaga. It was not a title she claimed nor denied. That made it worse. In an effort to reassert control, Scarron summoned a holomap of their fleet. Dozens of dreadnoughts shimmered in light above the chamber, an ocean of firepower meant to inspire awe. "You see this," he said proudly. "This is what awaits your people if they resist. Empires bow before such force." She tilted her head as if admiring art. "Impressive. Though forgive me, it reminds me of a chessboard." She gestured delicately at the hologram. "So many pieces, all in order, all waiting to be moved. But you know what's funny about chess?" She paused, her smile widening just enough to show teeth. "The queen is the most dangerous piece, and everyone underestimates her until it's too late." The hall chilled. Many did not understand the rules of chess, but they understood the undertone, the quiet assertion that she, small and unarmed, was the piece they should fear. The metaphor landed like a stone in still water, rippling outward until no one could meet her gaze. The generals pushed harder, demanding records of human wars, demanding proof of victories. She leaned back slightly, her voice calm as rainfall. "Records? We tidy up after ourselves. You won't find the messes we leave behind. You'll only find the silence where someone used to be." For the first time, no one laughed. The words were too sharp, too heavy. They tasted of extinction. The mood shifted. Fear seeped through arrogance, staining it. The laughter from earlier now sounded hollow in memory. She had not raised her voice, had not brandished a weapon, but the fortress felt smaller, its walls tighter, its air thinner. They realized she was not performing. She was conversing. And still the balance of power tipped toward her. An aide broke ranks, leaning close to Vrex and whispering frantically. "General, reports from other gates. Similar warnings. Every human flag read. Every scanner repeats the phrase." Vrex stiffened. "Impossible." The aide's hand shook. "Impossible or not, it spreads." Scarron bared his teeth. "Glitches. All of them." The woman smiled, watching them argue, as though observing children quarrel over toys. She adjusted her bag, the metallic clink inside faint but deliberate. The sound pricked at their nerves. She met their eyes, voice soft enough to sound like reassurance. "It's not a glitch. It's a courtesy." The chamber froze. Even the banners seemed to still. Courtesy. The word tasted like threat. A courtesy was something given before violence. A courtesy was the last kindness before the storm. The generals tried to scoff, but their voices faltered. The soldiers whispered more fervently. The phrase from the scanners repeated in every mind, each syllable now heavy as prophecy. "Do not engage." And as she stood calmly in the heart of their fortress, smiling as if at neighbors across a fence, the truth pressed against them like an unseen tide. Politeness was not weakness. It was warning, and they had ignored it. The council chamber was shaped like a theater, tiers rising in rings around a central floor where trials, speeches, and condemnations were performed for spectacle. The woman stood alone in that circle now, her duffel resting casually at her feet, her hands clasped loosely in front of her. Above her, holographic banners glowed with the sigils of alien empires, each one a symbol of 1,000 conquered worlds. The chamber smelled faintly of oils and metal, the air pressurized and dry, heavy with the expectation that this moment, like every other moment before it, would affirm their dominance. Yet their laughter had vanished. The scanner's warning still hummed in the background of their thoughts, too loud to ignore. Soldiers filled the stands, weapons at ease, but hands tense on triggers. Generals leaned forward on their thrones, their voices louder than they needed to be, straining against the quiet. "You are a curiosity, nothing more," Scarron declared, his ridges casting deep shadows across his face. "A mammal dressed as a diplomat, fragile, alone. Do you think politeness will earn you mercy here?" The woman looked up, her expression warm and unoffended. "Mercy? Oh no. I came here to have a conversation. I just prefer to keep it civil. Civility saves time, don't you think?" Her tone was so reasonable, so ordinary, that for a moment it seemed almost plausible. But then the words lingered too long, and the weight beneath them became clear. Civility was an option, not a guarantee. Vrex leaned forward, mandibles clacking. "You expect us to believe humans are dangerous? You have no claws, no exoskeletons, no venom. Your lifespan is laughably short. What can your kind possibly do?" She tilted her head, as though considering how to answer a child's riddle. "We wait," she said. "We smile and we wait. And when the door is unlocked, we're already inside." The chamber rustled uneasily. The soldiers exchanged glances. They had seen infiltrations, sabotage, unexpected victories, but never by creatures they dismissed as soft and clumsy. Her voice, calm as a lullaby, turned the idea of patience into a weapon sharper than any blade. "You speak in riddles," Scarron growled. "Speak plainly, human." "All right," she said kindly, as though indulging him. "You think strength is bone and muscle. We think strength is imagination. You think safety is armor and fleets. We think safety is convincing you not to fire until we've already chosen where the bullet lands. You see the difference." Her gaze lifted to the glowing holomap of the Empire's dreadnoughts suspended above the chamber. Rows upon rows of ships, their firepower enough to erase continents. She studied them with the detached curiosity of a tourist admiring art. Then she looked back down and smiled faintly. "You remind me of a poker table," she said. "All of you with your chips stacked high, flashing them for everyone to see. But poker isn't about the chips. It's about the face across from you. And I've never been one to fold." The translators rendered the words faithfully, but many aliens struggled with the cultural reference. Still, they understood the tone, unyielding, amused, dangerous. The idea that she compared their empire to a card game stung worse than outright defiance. One aide whispered too loudly, panic slipping past caution. "She is stalling. She is bait." The words slithered through the chamber. Bait. Suddenly, the woman's duffel, once ignored, became an object of silent dread. Generals barked to the aide to hold his tongue, but unease had already spread. Vrex slammed his claw against the railing. "Enough games. Show us what you are, human, or we will tear your world apart and see if your politeness survives the flames." Her eyes softened, and for the first time, something sharper glimmered beneath the surface. Pity, maybe, or inevitability. She crouched, unzipped the duffel, and drew out a small object. Not a weapon, not at first glance. A simple coin, dull and worn, stamped with the faded profile of an old president long dead. She balanced it on her thumb, flicked it into the air, and caught it with ease. The metallic click echoed far, louder than it should have, ringing through the chamber like a bell. "You threaten flames," she said gently. "We tend to start with sparks." Confusion rippled. The coin was nothing, just human scrap. Yet the way she flipped it casually, deliberately, as though it marked time, made even the veterans of countless wars feel suddenly unmoored. An alarm crackled across the comms. Officers scrambled at consoles, voices sharp with disbelief. "Admiral, multiple signals, emerging, unknown vessels." How did they? The holomap shifted, stuttered, then redrew itself. The Empire's dreadnoughts still glittered above the chamber, but now around them, cloaked signatures bloomed one by one. human ships sliding into visibility like shadows choosing to step into light. They had been there all along, unseen, patient. Gasps spread like wildfire. The generals lurched to their feet. Impossible. Vrex thundered. Our perimeter. Your perimeter, she interrupted softly, was built to keep things out. We were already in. Her words fell like stones into water, rippling outward, impossible to stop. The realization sank into every mind. The scanner's warning hadn't been a malfunction. It had been the truth. Do not engage. The predators were already inside the fence. Scarron roared, slamming a fist into the railing. Cowardice. You hide behind tricks. Tricks. She flipped the coin again, its arc glinting in the harsh lights. Where I'm from, we call it strategy. You built walls. We built doors. The chamber devolved into chaos. Generals shouted over one another. Soldiers scrambled for orders. Alarm screamed. Through it all she remained calm, as though this cacophony were no more troubling than a crowded cafe. She tucked the coin back into her palm and folded her hands once more. Do you know why we tell stories? She asked, her voice somehow cutting cleanly through the din. Why we whisper about monsters in forests, witches in huts, predators in the dark? It isn't to scare children. It's to remind ourselves what waits in the shadows when we grow arrogant. We remember our own reflection when it's sharpest. Some soldiers froze, the name on their lips again, Baba Yaga. The witch in the woods. The one who waits. Her eyes glinted, the faintest shimmer of amusement flickering across her face. You asked what a human can do, she said, her tone no louder than before, but every syllable a nail in the chamber's coffin. I can wait. I can smile. And I can remind you that the monster under the bed was real all along. The hollow map flickered again, showing human ships positioning, their formation precise, almost surgical. Not a wild ambush, an operation planned with patience, with foresight, with inevitability. The Empire's fleets were not surrounding prey. They were the ones encircled. One general whispered hoarsely, "What is your purpose here?" She looked up at the towering thrones, her expression so calm it was unbearable. Purpose? I came to talk. You didn't listen. So now you'll learn. A klaxon blared. On the outer channels, captains screamed for permission to fire. But no command came. No one wanted to be the first to test the warning etched into their scanners. Do not engage. The words felt less like advice and more like prophecy. She bent, zipped her duffel closed, and stood straight again. Her shadow stretched long across the chamber floor, thin but impossibly heavy. Your fleets are very symmetrical, she remarked. It makes them easy to break. Like glass. Beautiful but fragile. Human. Scarron roared, but his voice cracked with something dangerously close to fear. She smiled faintly, and for the first time her words lost their warmth. They rang clear, sharp, final. This isn't negotiation anymore. This is the part where you realize the wolves were never outside the walls. We've been sitting at your table all along. The lights flickered, power surging as if the fortress itself recoiled. The soldiers raised weapons instinctively, though no one dared fire. Generals shouted, comms blared, alarms howled. But through it all, she remained still, a coin glinting between her fingers. The scanners across the galaxy continued their relentless broadcast, repeating the same message in every tongue, on every screen, on every channel. Ali Baba Yaga, do not engage. And in the echo of those words, every alien present understood the truth with a clarity colder than space itself. The humans hadn't come to knock on the Empire's door. They had come to pull it off its hinges. The woman flicked the coin one last time, caught it, and closed her fist. Checkmate, she whispered. The chamber lights cut out. Darkness swallowed the council chamber, broken only by the pulse of emergency lights flashing scarlet across the walls. The banners of the Empire flickered, their proud sigils reduced to shadows shuddering on stone. In the silence that followed, the sound of the woman's coin clicking softly against her palm became unbearable, each metallic beat louder than the alarms. Soldiers gripped their weapons tighter, fingers trembling. Generals barked orders into comms, but no answers came back, only static. Then the fortress shuddered. A low, rolling vibration spread through the floor, rattling the seats, the glass panels, the pride that had built this empire. The holographic map redrew itself again, no longer smooth lines of formation, but chaos. Human ships had broken their cloak entirely now, surrounding the empire's fleet like wolves circling a herd. They moved not with panic, but with terrifying precision, every motion measured, every gap exploited. Scarron slammed a fist against the railing. Fire on them. Now. But the soldiers hesitated, eyes fixed on the human standing in the center of the chamber. She hadn't moved, hadn't raised a weapon, hadn't even tensed. She simply waited, calm as a woman standing in line at a store, the duffel bag still resting at her feet. And in her stillness was something more commanding than any general's shout. Vrex hissed, mandibles clattering. You. Tell them to stand down. Call them off. The woman smiled faintly, her tone gentle, almost soothing. I'm afraid that's not how this works. They're not waiting for me. They're waiting for you. Confusion rippled. For us. Scarron spat. Yes, she said, tilting her head as if explaining a board game to children. They're waiting for you to decide how badly you want to lose. The fortress trembled again as explosions echoed faintly through its walls. Alien dreadnoughts were firing, but not at the humans, at each other. Systems jammed, targeting scrambled, confusion spreading through their ranks like poison in a bloodstream. The human fleet hadn't struck first. They'd corrupted the Empire's own systems, forcing them to turn their might inward. A young officer screamed into his comm, "We're firing on allies. We can't stop it. Control has been severed." The woman's voice slid over his panic like silk. That's the problem with building such complicated toys. One wrong whisper, and they forget who their friends are. The chamber dissolved into shouting. Generals cursed, aides scrambled. Soldiers raised weapons toward the woman, then toward the ceiling, unsure which threat was real. Through it all, she stood serenely, brushing her thumb over the coin, her eyes glimmering with calm amusement. At last, Scarron snapped, his patience broken. Enough. Kill her. The command cracked like a whip, but the guards hesitated, paralyzed by the weight of the scanner's warning, by the nagging fear that obedience might mean suicide. She looked at them kindly, as though pitying their dilemma. If you're going to shoot, she said softly, you'd have done it already. Silence stretched, suffocating. The guards lowered their weapons. Scarron roared in fury, his ridges burning with rage, but his power was hollow now. Authority wilted in the face of something they could not define. Then the floor shook harder. A thunderous boom reverberated through the walls, and the holomap bloomed with catastrophic light. An entire sector of the Empire's fleet blinking out at once, swallowed in coordinated detonations. The humans had not merely surrounded them. They had mapped their weaknesses, slipped knives into the joints of armor, and twisted. Vrex's voice cracked into something close to fear. How did you? We've been watching for a very long time, the woman said, her voice still gentle, still maddeningly calm. You thought you were studying us. But all the while, we were studying you, taking notes, learning the rhythms of your arrogance. She tilted her head, her tone almost conversational. It's amazing what you can learn when you smile and nod in the right places. The fortress groaned again, lights flickering, the Empire's pride collapsing into chaos. Scarron lunged forward, his bulk towering over her, rage spilling from every line of his body. You dare call yourself a warrior? You hide, you trick, you crawl like vermin. She looked up at him, eyes steady, and for the first time her voice shed its warmth. It rang sharp, cold, final. No, we hunt. That's what you never understood. You mistake patience for weakness. You mistake politeness for submission. But the predator that smiles is still a predator. She bent, unzipped her duffel, and this time drew out something unmistakable. A blade, not crude steel, not glowing plasma, but a simple, honed edge gleaming faintly under the strobing lights. Primitive by their standards, laughable against their technology. Yet, as she held it, the chamber fell silent. The simplicity of it was terrifying. A weapon that needed no power, no calibration, only will. Scarron snarled, stepping back, despite himself. She twirled the blade once, then set it calmly against the rail before her, not even pointing it at them. "Do you know why humans still carry these, even when we have bigger toys?" she asked softly. "Because they don't run out of charge. Because they don't jam. Because sometimes the old ways are the surest." The implication hung heavy. She didn't need their technology. She didn't need anything. The chamber doors burst open as another quake rattled the fortress. Smoke poured in, carrying with it the acrid sting of burning circuits and the distant chorus of panicked soldiers. Human marines in matte armor slipped through the haze, their movements efficient, silent, predatory. They did not shout. They did not posture. They advanced with the inevitability of tide against shore. The generals froze, horror dawning as they realized what this meant. The humans weren't at the gates anymore. They were inside, everywhere, like shadows given flesh. The woman glanced back at the Marines, then turned to the generals once more. "I told you this was a conversation. You chose not to listen. So now the terms have changed." Vrex rose, mandibles clattering in fury, but before he could speak, a blast rocked the chamber, sending shards of ceiling crashing down. He stumbled, and for the first time his voice cracked into something raw. "What do you want?" Her eyes softened again, that unbearable calm returning. "What we've always wanted. To be left alone. To be respected. To remind you that we are not pets, not prey, not curiosities to be dissected. We are hunters, and hunters defend their own." Scarron bellowed, "You'll drown in blood for this." Her smile was faint, sad almost. "Maybe, but it won't be ours." The Marines spread through the chamber, securing exits, their weapons glinting under emergency light. The generals, for all their bluster, seemed smaller now, their banners hollow, their thrones absurd. The woman slid the blade back into her duffel and zipped it shut. "You see," she said, her voice dropping to a whisper that carried to every corner, "the monster under the bed doesn't roar. It waits. It breathes. And when you lean too close," she paused, letting the silence stretch, letting their hearts pound against their ribs, "it bites." The fortress shook one final time, a low groan like the death rattle of a beast too proud to know it was already slain. Explosions roared outside, the Empire's fleet collapsing piece by piece, their might unraveling faster than they could comprehend. The woman picked up her duffel, slung it over her shoulder, and stepped toward the trembling generals. None stopped her. None dared. She walked as though leaving a dinner she had grown bored of, her footsteps unhurried, her face serene. Behind her, the scanners still flashed their relentless warning, broadcast now across the entire network, echoing through every stronghold, every outpost, every ship. "Ali Baba Yaga, do not engage." The words no longer looked like code or glitch. They looked like prophecy. They sounded like doom. As the chamber doors closed behind her, leaving the generals in smoke and silence, one alien finally whispered the question that had been clawing at every mind since the beginning. "What are humans?" The answer did not come from her lips, but from the thunder outside, from the fleets breaking like glass, from the shadows spreading through their fortress with surgical inevitability. Predators. And as the fortress trembled beneath the weight of its own collapse, the woman's voice drifted faintly through the comms, gentle as a lullaby, final as judgment. "We're the story you tell your children to keep them from wandering too far into the dark. And you've wandered too far." The last of the lights flickered, the holomap shattered into static, and the Empire's great fortress fell into silence, as if the universe itself had paused to listen.